Get out. Now. The shout sliced through the heavy air of the Grant House Midtown kitchen, an upscale restaurant in the heart of Manhattan. Knives froze mid-air, sauce dripped onto cold steel. The smell of burnt butter, sautéed garlic, and the heat from the stoves fused into a hazy cloud surrounding the man who had just spoken, Executive Chef Dylan Rhodes. At the doorway, caught between the golden glow spilling in from the elegant dining room, stood Olivia Grant, a black woman in her late 30s, wrapped in a pale pink silk dress, soft as a sigh. Her hair was pulled back, neatly low and elegant. Light glimmered off the small pearl earrings at her ears and the rose-gold watch on her wrist. Every detail was refined, understated, just like the way she carried herself. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Dylan, his apron marked with red wine and oil stains, took a step forward. His sharp eyes swept over her from head to toe, filled with a mix of suspicion and disdain. This area is for staff. Only, he said, his voice firm. Guests aren't allowed in here. A faint smile, almost invisible, touched Olivia's lips. I know, she replied, her tone steady, low and calm, so calm that every sound in the kitchen seemed to hush just to hear her. The entire crew froze. Sous Chef Tyler Kim glanced at Dylan and shrugged slightly. The young server at the pass, Lily, pretended to check the order slips, but couldn't tear her eyes away. In the far corner, Jamal Carter, a line cook, barely past 20, whispered to his co-worker, "Something's off." The air in the kitchen thickened, heavy with tension. Dylan took a deep breath, stepping closer. "Then you know you shouldn't be here. I don't need anyone observing in the middle of peak service." Observing, Olivia repeated softly, almost a whisper. "That's exactly what I'm doing." Her voice was steady, like a heartbeat in an emergency room, controlled, measured, quietly unnerving. Dylan smirked, tilting his head. "I don't recall inviting you." Olivia's gaze stayed fixed on him. "I don't need an invitation to care about the quality of my own meal." A few cooks chuckled under their breath, assuming she was just another entitled guest trying to sound informed. Dylan smirked, turning back toward them. "Get back to work. Don't waste time." But no one moved. Everyone could feel something larger, brewing beneath the surface. Olivia took a single step forward. Just one yet. It made Dylan's pulse quicken. Her heels didn't echo, only the soft rustle of silk against tile, but the sound cut through the air like a blade. Her eyes drifted toward the pass, scanning the plates lined up. A ribeye slightly burnt on the edges. A citrus amberjack plated off center sauce, bleeding across the white rim. "I recognize this dish from the new menu," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But it doesn't match the version I approved." Tyler frowned. "You approved? Oh, she probably thinks she's some kind of master chef judge." Dylan scoffed. "We work for a living here, sweetheart, not for show." The remark stirred the kitchen like a gust of cold air. Lily stopped breathing. Jamal froze his knife, hovering over the cutting board. He could feel something irreversible about to happen. Olivia didn't respond. She looked at Dylan, not with anger, but with a calm that reflected him back to himself. Arrogance, exhaustion, emptiness. "You should leave," Dylan said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "This isn't a place for attention-seeking." "I'm not seeking attention," Olivia replied. "I'm just watching to understand what's really happening here." Her composure infuriated him. He turned to Tyler. "Call security." Tyler hesitated. "Are you sure I'm sure," Dylan snapped. "We don't have time for guests wandering into the kitchen." Silence followed. Olivia took a slow breath and looked around. Her gaze stopped on a brass plaque mounted on the wall, engraved with the restaurant's name in gold letters. The light reflected off it, catching her eyes with a glint that burned quietly. "Interesting," she murmured. "I once stood right here 20 years ago, fresh out of culinary school. Back then I was told I didn't belong here either." Dylan smirked. "Good for you. But those days are over. I'm the one running this place now." Olivia's lips curved slightly. "Yes, until I say otherwise." The words weren't loud, but they stopped the air from moving. Tyler frowned. Lily dropped the order slip. Jamal froze in place. Dylan blinked, then gave a short, bitter laugh. "Who do you think you are?" "The owner." Olivia tilted her head, a faint smile forming. "I think you just said it." Before Dylan could react, Olivia calmly reached into her clutch and took out her phone. Every movement was deliberate, unhurried, steady. "Erin," she said into the phone, her tone crisp and clear. "Open the Grant House Midtown franchise file. Section 7C, hostile conduct toward senior management. Timestamp this exact moment and back up all kitchen surveillance from the past 10 minutes. The kitchen went dead silent. Dylan let out a laugh, trying to mask the chill crawling down his spine. "Who are you calling Yelp?" Olivia looked him straight in the eyes. "No, my office." Just one sentence, but it rang like a bell. Jamal swallowed hard. Tyler stepped back. Lily covered her mouth. Dylan stiffened but clung to whatever authority he had left. "If you're trying to put on a show, make it a good one. Come back when you actually own this place." Olivia's gaze didn't waver. Calm, steady, unshaken. The kitchen light caught her rose gold watch, flashing like lightning. "You're right," she said softly. "I'll come back as the owner." And in that instant, though, no one fully grasped it, yet everyone could feel it. Something had just shifted. The air hung heavy. The only sounds were the quiet bubbling of sauce and the pounding of hearts. Olivia Grant turned slightly, her eyes sweeping over every face in the room. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to prove anything. Just standing there, she commanded silence. No one knew it yet, but in a few minutes, those arrogant words would become the crack that would bring down an empire worth over $1.1 billion. But right now, in the middle of Manhattan, amid the hiss of oil and the sting of smoke, a woman was reclaiming the kitchen that had always been hers. The air in the kitchen felt thick, almost solid. Steam rising from the simmering pots wasn't enough to hide the weight of every gaze now fixed on Olivia Grant. Everyone could sense an invisible authority radiating from her, even though she stood perfectly still, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice calm, so calm, it made every heartbeat quicken. "I'm here, Miss Grant." Erin Blake's voice came crisply through the phone, precise, efficient, professional. "Confirm my identity, current time and location. Grant House, Midtown," Olivia said slowly, as if reciting an official memo. "Initiate a branch-level management audit. I want the full shift log from the past 24 hours. Confirmed, Erin replied. "Do you want to activate Section 7C? Not yet," Olivia answered. "Mark it as a potential violation. I'll review later." When she hung up, the sounds in the kitchen seemed louder. The clatter of knives, the hiss of gas burners, someone's sharp inhale. Dylan Rhodes gave a short laugh, trying to mask his unease. "What exactly are you doing? Some kind of joke, you can call it that if you want," Olivia said evenly. "But remember, everything you just said has been recorded." The statement made Tyler, the sous chef, look away. Jamal, still holding his phone with the camera on, didn't dare stop recording. He kept it pointed at Olivia, partly out of curiosity, partly because his instincts told him This wasn't an ordinary scene. Dylan stepped closer, his voice rising. "Listen to me, lady. I don't know who you're pretending to be, but I'm not letting anyone walk into my kitchen and cause chaos like this." "Your kitchen." Olivia lifted her gaze, her dark eyes reflecting the flames around them. "Interesting. I don't recall transferring ownership." His smirk cracked. Dylan's face twitched somewhere between anger and panic. "I run this place. I built this menu. I lead this team. Without me, this restaurant is nothing without you." Olivia replied softly. "Grant House will still operate, because it was never just yours." Her words came slow but hit hard. Tyler felt his pulse race. Lily glanced at Jamal, whispering, "Who is she?" Jamal just shook his head, unable to answer. Dylan drew a deep breath, clinging to his authority. "You think a few words will scare me? I've worked here 5 years. I know every inch of this kitchen. You're nobody." Olivia tilted her head slightly, her voice low but sharp. "I'm the person who knows you just made the biggest mistake of your career." He barked out a hollow laugh. "Mistake I'm doing my job. You're the one trespassing in a staff-only area." Olivia didn't respond immediately. She took a step forward, her eyes locked on him, stripping away every layer of denial. "I once stood where you are. I know what it's like to defend every dish, every detail. But there's one thing you've never learned: respect." The words cut like a blade. Dylan clenched his fists. "You have no right to judge me." "Yes, I do," Olivia said, her tone steady as the rhythm of a knife on a cutting board. "Because I've been paying your salary for the past 5 years. The kitchen went silent. Tyler stepped back instinctively. Lily set her tray down the water in her glass, trembling. Dylan stared, stunned. "What did you just say?" Olivia didn't answer right away. She looked around the kitchen at every tile, every steel counter, every face frozen in disbelief. Then she spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I own Grant Dining Group, including this place." A heavy silence settled, broken only by the soft sizzle of butter in a pan. Jamal swallowed hard, his hands shaking, but he kept filming. All eyes turned to Dylan. He couldn't speak. He just stared at Olivia as if she had said something impossible. "No way," he stammered. "The owner's some investor from Boston. I've met him." "You met a contract," Olivia interrupted, her voice cold as glass. "And that contract carries my signature." The words landed like a hammer. Dylan blinked rapidly, breath unsteady. Tyler froze. Lily whispered, "Oh my God." Olivia bent down, picked up the torn tasting menu Dylan had ripped earlier, folded it carefully, and set it on the counter. "I don't need to prove anything, but I'll let you see for yourself." She raised the phone again, her tone composed. "Erin reopened Section 7C. Confirmed direct violation at the Midtown branch. Reason hostile conduct toward the owner. Activate temporary suspension of Dylan Rhodes's internal access." Erin's response was immediate. "Confirmed. Process running now." Instantly, the management monitor on the wall went dark. The blue light on the control panel flickered out, replaced by a red message, "Account access revoked." Jamal looked up, eyes wide. Oh my God, she actually did it. Dylan spun around, shouting, "What the hell, who shut down my system?" "Not yours," Olivia said calmly, her gaze unwavering. "Mine." A murmur rippled from the dining room. Guests near the kitchen entrance were beginning to notice. Sarah Turner, a VIP guest, leaned toward her husband. "Did you hear that she said owner?" Michael Turner nodded, eyes fixed on the scene. Dylan still refused to back down. "You'll regret this. You can't destroy a brand over a petty argument." Olivia's lips curved faintly. I'm not destroying this brand. I'm saving it from you. The words silenced the room. Tyler lowered his head. Lily swallowed hard. Jamal shifted his camera toward Dylan, whose face flushed red eyes, burning with anger and humiliation. Olivia turned to the entire staff, her voice not loud, but carrying clear authority. I once stood where you stand. I know what it's like to be dismissed, ordered around, pushed out of your own dream. But today, I'm here to remind you, no one has the right to make you feel small in the kitchen you helped build. Lily bit her lip, her eyes wet. Jamal looked down, heart pounding. Olivia turned back to Dylan, finishing in a voice soft as wind. You told me to come back when I owned this place. I'm back now, and you're not. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Olivia placed her phone on the counter and spoke clearly. Erin confirmed suspension of Dylan Rhodes's employment, effective immediately. Confirmed, Erin's voice replied, cool and firm. The brass plaque on the wall reflected Olivia's image. Calm, resolute, powerful. A woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. From the dining room, a slow ripple of applause began, faint at first, then spreading like waves against the glass wall that separated two worlds, real authority and false power. Dylan stepped back, his eyes empty. Olivia picked up her clutch and turned toward the door. Her silk dress brushed lightly across the tile floor, leaving behind the faint scent of perfume, and a silence that felt heavier than sound, the silence of truth revealed. As the door closed, Lily exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Jamal kept his phone raised, the glow of the screen lighting his young face. She just did what no one else dared, he whispered. Tyler looked toward the door. No. She did what only someone with real power could do. Outside, the applause continued to echo. And inside that sweltering kitchen, among the boiling pots and clattering pans, an empire had just changed hands, with nothing more than a conversation. The kitchen door had barely swung shut when whispers rose like static, folding into the hiss of oil in the pans, and the soft clink of metal spoons against copper pots. Yet no one truly worked, every gaze pinned to where Olivia Grant had disappeared. Dylan Rhodes stood frozen, his fist still clamped around a saucer spoon, as if letting go would make the world collapse, his face flushing with anger, then draining to fear, while on the management screen, a red message kept blinking the words. Access revoked, a cold reminder that the power he thought he owned had been an illusion. The sous chef Tyler glanced at Dylan and rasped, "What are you going to do now?" Dylan did not answer. He hurled the spoon, and the clang rang sharp. "This is not over. I'm going to speak to her superior. No one fires me like that." Jamal kept filming his camera, trembling. "She is the superior chef." "Be quiet," Dylan snapped, though the weight had gone from his voice. Out in the dining room, attention had fully shifted to the kitchen bar, guests stilled, as the back of house lights washed to a dull red while the system rebooted and the murmurs spread. "Who is she? Is she the owner? I think I saw her name in Forbes." Inside, Olivia Grant returned without a sound. She needed no announcement, only presence, and the room fell into absolute silence as she walked to the prep table where the torn menu still lay. "You were right about one thing, Dylan," she said low, even cool. "This kitchen is the soul of the restaurant, but you forgot that a soul cannot live without a heart, and that heart is a culture of respect." Dylan let out a sour laugh. "Respect? You mean I should bow to someone who walks into my kitchen without warning? Not bow," Olivia replied. Just know when to be silent." She turned and pointed to the brass plaque, engraved with Grant House, Midtown. "Do you know why that plaque sits where it does?" Dylan scoffed. "So guests see it when they walk in, I suppose." Olivia shook her head, her eyes flashing like metal. "So anyone who works here remembers whose name they serve under." A heavy pause followed. Tyler drew a slow breath. Lily went still, and Jamal watched Olivia, as if, seeing the mentor he had hoped the industry could produce, a person who did not need to shout to assert power. Dylan's face tightened, and his voice began to shake. "You cannot. I have given 5 years to this place. I built the menu. I trained the staff. Olivia cut in, soft but sharper than a blade, and I gave you an opportunity. What did you do with it? You used it to humiliate, to elevate yourself above others. You turned this kitchen into a place of fear instead of pride." She held his gaze. "I was once a line cook, pushed out like an extra pair of hands, and I promised myself that when I led, no one would ever have to hear what you just said to me. Today I keep that promise." Jamal lowered his head, unable to hide the feeling. He knew too well what it meant to be dismissed for lacking a title or name, and he whispered to himself, "She is right." Dylan pressed back, clinging to a fraying dignity. "You may own this place, but you do not know how to run a kitchen. You will ruin everything out of pride." Olivia looked through him. "Pride? No, Dylan. This is a boundary." She stepped closer, stopping right in front of him. "You told me to come back when I owned this place. I am back, and the only question left is what you plan to do now." Dylan edged half a step away. No one breathed. Tyler stared down. Lily clenched her hands, and Jamal kept the frame steady, catching the instant the man who had ruled this room began to grasp that he had lost it all. Erin Olivia called without looking at her phone. "Activate termination of Dylan Rhodes's contract. Effective immediately, send the internal notice and lock all of his access." "Confirmed," Erin's voice replied. A small chime sounded from the wall terminal. Then everything went dark. Screens grayed out. No tickets, no controls, only silence. Olivia no longer looked at Dylan. She turned to the team. "Tyler will lead the rest of this service. When you finish, go home early. Tomorrow we begin again with a new spirit." Tyler nodded, fear and relief flickering together. "Yes, Miss Grant." "Thank you," Olivia said then to Lily. "You are on the pass." "Yes, yes." Lily answered her voice, trembling. "You saw what just happened?" Olivia said gently. "Remember, this respect is never something you can demand by shouting. It has to be built by action." Lily nodded, eyes wet. Olivia's smile was a breath of air as she moved on and stopped before Jamal, who still held his phone. "You filmed all of it?" Jamal swallowed. "Yes, I am sorry if you would rather." No," Olivia said softer still. "Keep it sometimes, the truth needs a record." He nodded, speechless. Olivia left the kitchen, and this time no one dared speak. Dylan sank onto a steel chair, hands, shaking eyes fixed on the brass plaque, where the lights reflected his face, back at him, smaller, distorted. Tyler set a hand on his shoulder and murmured, "You should go, Chef." "Do not call me that any more," Dylan muttered. Tyler said nothing. He turned to the others. "Let us clean up. Finish the last task today." In the hall, Olivia walked toward the main lobby, warm ceiling lights sliding across the white tile and stretching her shadow to the door. Diners turned as she passed, some recognizing her from business magazines. A middle-aged man rose and clapped. Others followed, and within moments the entire room applauded, together slow and steady like rain on glass. Olivia paused and looked back through the kitchen window at the chapter she had just closed her eyes, narrowing not with pride, but resolve. She knew this moment would carry far beyond Grant Dining Group into the wider industry. In the kitchen, Dylan bowed his head. Jamal stopped recording and looked at the final frame, Olivia standing tall in the center of the room, pink silk, gently moving her gaze, tranquil and unwavering. And he tapped, save, and whispered, "This is not just a video. This is a lesson." Out in the lobby, Olivia passed reception and paused beside two VIP guests. The woman asked, "Are you Miss Grant?" Olivia nodded. "Yes." "We saw what happened. You were remarkable." Olivia smiled, soft as a breath. Not remarkable, just necessary. She pushed through the doors into the street, Manhattan's neon washing her dress in a quiet glow of rose, each step unhurried and sure. Inside her clutch, the phone buzzed Erin's update termination, completed Dylan Rhodes's access revoked across the system. Olivia read it and sent 2 words. "Good. Proceed." She drew a long breath. The city still roared, but inside she found stillness. A storm had ended, and a new era had begun, one where power didn't need to scream, only to stand firm at the heart of the kitchen. The next morning, New York woke beneath a pale mist, while a 12-minute video recorded on Jamal Carter's phone had already begun spreading across social media. It opened with Olivia Grant's calm voice in a smoke-filled kitchen saying, "I am the owner of Grant Dining Group, including this place." The line struck like a hammer against the pride of thousands of chefs who had long believed that power belonged only to those who stood before the flames. Within an hour, the clip had surpassed 1 million views. At a small cafe in Soho, a group of hospitality students gathered around an iPad, eyes wide. She didn't shout, didn't threaten yet. The whole kitchen went silent, one said. "That's real power," another replied. In the Bronx, a group of night shift servers watching the video on their phones nodded in quiet agreement. She did what everyone in this industry has dreamed of, ending the idea that the head chef is a king. Inside the Grant Dining Group office at Hudson Yards, Erin Blake had been waiting since early morning. She knew Olivia disliked attention and had no patience for praise yet when the door opened and Olivia entered draped in a grey coat over a simple business suit. Erin couldn't hide her excitement. The videos hit over 10 million views. News outlets are calling non-stop CNN, Business Insider, even Forbes. Olivia set her clutch on the desk and said calmly, "I imagine some are calling to criticize." Erin nodded. "Yes, a few say you were too cold, too extreme, but most are on your side. They're calling it the soft power in pink moment." Olivia smiled faintly, not with pride, but irony. "People love labels. But I didn't wear a pink dress to make a statement. I wore it because it let me breathe." Erin opened her tablet, scrolling through headlines. Reservations across the group are surging. 3 new investors want meetings to discuss international expansion. Olivia was silent for a few seconds, eyes resting on a headline reading Olivia Grant, the CEO who fired her chef on camera. She tapped the screen lightly, then closed the tablet. "Erin, I don't want people to remember me for firing someone. I want them to remember why I did it." Erin nodded with understanding. "I've prepared the detailed report for the board." And she hesitated. Dylan Rhodes sent a public apology email. Olivia wasn't surprised. What did he write? He said he regrets forgetting who he was serving. Olivia leaned back in her chair, her eyes weary, yet soft with compassion. Regret doesn't change the past, but it might save what's left of him. "Keep the email. I'll use it when I speak to the team." Outside the glass windows, Manhattan buzzed as usual, sunlight glinting off skyscrapers, as if the city itself were witnessing a quiet transformation. That afternoon, the conference room on the 42nd floor filled with branch directors, some from Chicago, Dallas, Miami, even San Francisco. On the large screen, a still frame from the video showed Olivia standing in the kitchen, light reflecting off her rose-gold watch. Silence filled the room. Olivia stood at the head of the table, speaking slowly. "I know you've all seen it. I have no regrets. But if anyone believes I did this for fame, you should leave this room now." No one moved. She continued, "We can build a world-class restaurant chain, but if its culture rots from within, we're nothing but pretenders of elegance. I started from the lowest rung. I know how it feels to be dismissed, and I won't let Grant Dining Group become a place that repeats those mistakes." As senior director Nathan Cole folded his hands. "But don't you think handling it so publicly might make employees afraid they could lose trust?" Olivia met his eyes. "If they fear being held accountable, they don't belong here. But if they feel safe, knowing they're protected from arrogance, they are the future of this brand." Erin noticed nods forming around the room. A young director, Ava Martinez, spoke up. "If something like that happens at my branch, what should I do?" "Record it," Olivia replied without pause. "Report it to me, and I'll handle it." "Aren't you afraid people will say it's over controlling?" Ava asked. "Control is not as dangerous as silence," Olivia answered. "It's silence that has allowed too many to believe they can insult others without consequence." The room went still again. After a moment, Nathan Cole smiled faintly. "Maybe you're right. This industry needs a reset." Olivia nodded. Not a reset, just a return to what's right. When the meeting ended, Erin handed her a slim folder. "This is the proposal for new conduct policies. I added a respect clause. Any violation against the owner or staff leads to immediate termination. No negotiation." Olivia flipped through it quickly. "Good. But add one line. Respect isn't optional. It's identity." On her way back inside the car, Olivia checked her phone. Messages from former chefs appeared. "Thank you for speaking for us." She smiled faintly, eyes distant as the buildings passed by. What she felt wasn't triumph, but relief. She had done what many should have done long ago. That night, Olivia stood by the window of her Tribeca apartment, the city lights reflected in the glass of water she held. The television, muted, replayed a segment titled "Olivia Grant, the woman who changed restaurant culture in America." Beneath it, thousands of comments scrolled most supportive. One stood out. She didn't just fire a man, she taught the world a lesson in dignity. She set her glass down and inhaled deeply. On the table, her rose-gold watch gleamed softly, the symbol of quiet strength. Erin called. "You might want to know culinary schools have started showing the video in management classes. They're calling it the Grant Protocol." Olivia let out a gentle laugh. "A lesson I never meant to teach, but maybe it's for the best, as long as they understand that real power doesn't live in loud voices, but in calm resolve." She ended the call and leaned back in her chair. Outside, car horns echoed, and a cool wind brushed the window. Olivia looked down at the city, the endless flow of people, ambition and lessons still waiting to be learned. Deep inside, she knew she had started a new chapter, not a war between owners and employees, but a conversation between humanity and self-respect. And as the Manhattan lights shimmered against the glass, Olivia whispered to herself, "Respect doesn't need to shout. It only needs to endure long enough for everyone to listen." 3 days later, the top floor of Grant Dining Group's headquarters glowed with early morning light. Through the tall windows, Manhattan looked as though it were steaming under a veil of silver mist. The grand conference room that day was utterly silent. No clinking glasses, no polite chatter, only anticipation. Dozens of franchise owners from across the United States sat around a long walnut table, more than 30 feet in length. At the head of the room, Olivia Grant entered not in her pink silk dress this time, but in a black blouse and tailored slacks, her posture sharp and straight, her eyes calm yet powerful enough to hush the room the moment she appeared. No introduction was needed. Everyone knew why they were there. The large screen behind her flickered first, dark, then illuminated with 2 images side by side. On the left, the brass plaque engraved with the words Grant House, Midtown, and on the right, a still from the now famous video Dylan Rhodes pointing toward the door, while across from him, Olivia stood motionless, silent, composed. Olivia didn't begin with greetings. She spoke right away. These are 2 definitions of power. One comes from the habit of commanding. The other comes from the ability to control oneself. The first sentence fell like a stone, and the energy in the room shifted. Sunlight reflected off her rose-gold watch, glowing faintly like the slow heartbeat of the space itself. She walked slowly around the table, her tone steady, not raised, but resonant in every word. I know many of you are worried that the video might make the public think we are harsh, maybe even authoritarian. But if you are afraid of the truth, then we were never strong enough to represent this brand. Some shifted in their seats. Nathan Cole, a veteran franchise owner from Chicago, cleared his throat. Miss Grant, none of us object to the principle of respect, but firing someone publicly in the middle of service, it could hurt our image. That's why I believe such matters should be handled privately. Olivia stopped and turned toward him, her gaze not cold, but sharp as glass. I understand, Nathan. But what harms our image isn't transparency. It's pretense. At the end of the table, Ava Martinez, the youngest franchise owner, spoke up. I think what you did was inspiring. At my branch, the chefs have started acting differently. They know exactly who carries the ultimate responsibility. Exactly, Olivia replied. No one should forget that, because power isn't something to display, it's something to protect. She signaled to Erin, who switched to the next slide. Starting today, all franchise contracts will include the respect clause, the dignity clause. Any act of insult, disregard, or hostility toward management, colleagues, or ownership will be considered a severe violation. No warning, no negotiation, no compensation. The room sank into absolute silence. Erin glanced around and saw a few tense faces. Another franchise owner spoke up. That seems too extreme. Employees will be afraid to make mistakes. Olivia responded without hesitation. Mistakes can be corrected. Disrespect cannot. Her tone lowered, slightly slower, deeper. I don't want to build the biggest restaurant chain in the country. I want to build one where people can hold their heads high when they say they work for Grant Dining Group. And to do that, no one is allowed to look down on another person. Light glinted off her hair, casting a soft reflection on the ceiling. She stopped beneath the screen and said gently but clearly, "You're not sitting here for me. You're here for the name on that brass plaque. And if even one of us forgets that the entire system will pay the price." At the far end, Nathan Cole folded his arms, thought for a long moment, then said, "I used to think rules like these belonged only in theory books, but now I see they're a mirror. And that mirror reflects the leader himself. Olivia nodded slightly. There's no truer mirror than the way we treat those with less power than us. To her right, Ava asked softly, "What if we see something like this or happen at another branch?" "Record it," Olivia said immediately. "Send it to me. And I promise the reaction will be faster than that viral storm 3 days ago." A few people chuckled quietly, not mockingly, but with the sound of acceptance. Olivia smiled for the first time during the meeting. "I don't want you to fear me. I just want each of you to remember, no meal is good enough to hide an insult, and no profit is large enough to buy back dignity." The room stayed still for a long moment. Then one by one they stood and began signing the new contract addendum. Erin collected the papers, her eyes glimmering with quiet pride. That afternoon, when everyone had left, Olivia remained alone in the conference room. Late sunlight slanted through the glass, striking the real brass plaque mounted on the wall. She walked toward it and gently touched the engraved words, "Grant House established 2008. The metal was cold, but under her fingertips it slowly warmed. "Back then I was just a line cook," she whispered. "They said my voice wasn't strong enough to lead a kitchen. Now they'll have to listen." Her phone buzzed a message from Erin. "The official video has reached 42 million views. The hashtag #SoftPowerInPink has spread to 8 countries. Olivia read it, then set her phone back down. In the golden light of sunset, her smile wasn't radiant, just a small curve enough to show relief. That night, she stood alone on the terrace of her Tribeca apartment. The city below burned with light, every building like a vein pulsing with energy. On the small table beside her, a glass of water reflected the glow, and her rose-gold watch still shimmered. Erin stepped out behind her holding a folder. "The new training protocol, Miss Grant," she said. "I added a respect orientation module. All new employees will learn about our culture of respect from their first day." Olivia took the folder, scanned it, her eyes warm with approval. "Good. Make sure they understand this isn't just policy. It's the foundation of what it means to exist in Grant Group." Erin nodded and left quietly. Olivia remained the night wind, brushing through her hair, cool and clean. Down below, somewhere across the city, other kitchens still burned bright knives, striking boards, pans, sizzling voices, shouting orders into the heat of oil and steam. She knew there were still other Dylans out there, people who thought power meant yelling louder than everyone else. But she also knew that every video, every article, every story was slowly changing the way people saw things. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I don't need praise. I only need this world to understand that calm has its own volume." The wind carried her words into the distance, blending with the faint hum of traffic, the steady heartbeat of the city, aligning with her story. Somewhere below, a group of young students watched the video again, chanting, "She didn't yell." She owned the room. Olivia smiled softly and whispered back, "You don't have to yell. You just have to stand firm." Beneath the Manhattan night sky, her words drifted through the air like an eternal reminder that dignity, once it becomes a policy, can never be revoked. On the 4th morning, after what the press had begun calling the iconic night at Grant House, Midtown, the city of New York pulsed as if no storm had ever swept through its culinary world. But inside the headquarters of Grant Dining Group, the aftershocks still echoed. Calls, emails, partnership offers, and criticisms kept pouring in. The world was still talking about Olivia Grant, the woman who never raised her voice but silenced an entire system. In her glass-walled office, Olivia sat reviewing a detailed report from Erin Blake. On the screen, The system's growth chart soared at an almost unreal rate, 28% revenue increase in just 3 days. Yet what caught Olivia's attention wasn't the number, but the hundreds of comments beneath every shared video. This is how a real leader acts. She doesn't need power. She is power. Olivia scrolled slowly, her eyes narrowing, not from pride, but from realization the story had grown beyond her control. "Erin," she said, without looking up, "I don't want us to become an online symbol. Control the narrative. Focus on real values." Erin nodded. "I've coordinated with the PR team. The statement will highlight our leadership philosophy, not the drama." "Good," Olivia said softly. "But remember, every campaign must begin with truth, never exaggeration." She folded her hands, thoughtful. The memories from that night returned, Jamal's stunned eyes, Dylan's breaking voice, the slow ripple of applause from the dining room. Every face, every sound stayed with her. She felt no triumph, only the weight of something larger, the responsibility to redefine how people understood power and dignity. Erin broke the silence. "There's a request for a full-length interview from the New York Times. They want to discuss soft power leadership." Olivia looked up. "No, I won't speak while the echo is still fresh. I don't want my words twisted into headlines. But it's a chance to tell the story the right way," Erin suggested. Olivia smiled, faintly sharp and calm. "The right story doesn't need me to tell it. It needs me to keep living it." She rose, walking to the window, gazing down at the flowing traffic below. Sunlight broke through the glass, glinting on her rose-gold watch, a small detail. But to her, a reminder: stay composed even when the fire burns around you. By noon, she and Erin visited the downtown branch, chosen as the pilot model for the new culture. No cameras, no reporters, just real people doing real work. Olivia stepped into the kitchen, where the rhythm of knives and pans blended into a single heartbeat. The new sous chef, Marcus Young, a man with deep brown eyes and a calm smile, approached her. "It's an honor, Miss Grant. I used to work in San Francisco. Your video changed the way I teach my trainees." Olivia smiled lightly. "Don't call it my video. Call it our lesson." She walked around the kitchen. Everyone kept working, but their glances toward her carried neither fear nor curiosity. It was respect. A young line cook bowed slightly and said quietly, "I used to get yelled at for spilling sauce, but now no one dares to shout. Not out of fear, but because they understand." Olivia nodded, her voice softening. "Understanding is the first step to change." Erin, walking beside her, murmured, "This is what you've created, a culture that spreads through silence." Olivia looked at her and smiled. Silence, when strong enough, becomes sound. As they left that afternoon, Olivia paused by the front desk. A young hostess, her hands trembling slightly, said, "Miss Grant, I just wanted to say I've watched the clip at least 10 times. It made me believe I can be strong without yelling." Olivia touched the girl's shoulder gently, her eyes kind. "Thank you. But remember, strength isn't for defeating others. It's for protecting what's right." Later that evening on the drive back, Erin turned on the radio. A talk show host's voice filled the car. "Olivia Grant has done what no one dared. She hasn't just led a corporation, she's redefined leadership itself. Soft power is no longer an abstract idea. It now has a face, an action, a result." Olivia switched off the radio. "When people start attaching a face to a philosophy, they forget its origin," she said. "Soft power isn't me. It's the shift in how people treat one another." Erin nodded. "I understand." But maybe they need a face to remember it. Olivia looked out the window where sunset cast a red glow over the Empire State Building. If they need an image, she said quietly, let it be that kitchen silent when truth walked in. That night, Olivia returned to her Tribeca apartment. The city still blazed outside. She turned on the television, not to the news, but to a cooking channel. A young chef was speaking about respect in the kitchen, mentioning her as an example. Olivia switched it off and smiled faintly. On the table, Erin had left a folder, plans for European expansion. At the bottom was a handwritten note. It's not power that makes people follow. It's respect that makes them believe. Olivia read the line 3 times. Her fingers brushed over the ink as if feeling its weight. Outside, the sky darkened with rain. The soft patter on the window merged with the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Olivia closed her eyes. In that moment, she remembered herself 10 years ago, a young woman standing by the prep station, dismissed from her shift for saying, "The dish needs more time to be perfect." Back then, she had vowed one day her voice would never be seen as noise. Now she had kept that promise. But she knew the journey wasn't over. Real change doesn't come from a viral video. It comes from every small kitchen, every glance that carries respect for the person beside you. Olivia stood and opened the window. The scent of rain drifted in, cool and pure. She looked down at the glowing streams of headlights, the lifeblood of the city flowing endlessly. She whispered not to anyone, but as a quiet vow to herself. Tomorrow I'll keep going, because there are still places that haven't learned how to stay silent long enough to listen. And amid the restless hum of Manhattan, her sigh blended with the wind light, as the breath of someone laying the first stone of a revolution, without drums, a revolution, written in composure and remembered through silence. Early on a weekend morning, Manhattan was wrapped in a thin veil of mist, like breath fogging up glass. The top floor of Grant Dining Group's headquarters still glowed with light, even though the clock had only just struck 6. Olivia Grant was already there alone. On her desk lay stacks of expansion plans, franchise applications, newspaper articles and letters of gratitude from employees and partners. Each sheet of paper represented another ripple spreading outward from the incident at Grant House Midtown, a moment that had once seemed personal, but had since become a milestone for an entire industry. Olivia sat still, her gaze resting on a framed photograph hanging on the wall. Her first restaurant team, all wearing white aprons, all smiling proudly, her own face radiant as she held a pan. In that photo, she knew nothing about power. She only knew cooking, working hard, and believing that anyone who truly gave their best deserved respect. She smiled faintly and murmured into the quiet room. It turns out the only thing that never changes is how we treat one another. The office door opened, and Erin Blake entered, carrying 2 cups of hot coffee. "You've been up since 4. Coffee and sunrise are how I remember I'm still human," Olivia said with a small smile. "Any news?" Erin set a cup down and handed her a tablet. "Good news first. The Grant House video is now part of the management training curriculum at 3 top hospitality schools. Bad news, Dylan Rhodes just appeared on a podcast. He admits he was wrong, but he still says you were too cold." Olivia picked up the tablet and played the video. On screen, Dylan sat before a microphone, thinner now, eyes dimmed. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "But she, Miss Grant, could have talked to me privately. She didn't have to humiliate me." Olivia said nothing for a long while. Erin watched her uneasy. "Do you want to respond? No?" Olivia said. "Losing face isn't what hurt him. Losing control is. And that's a lesson no words can teach." She set the tablet down and turned toward the window. The first rays of sunlight broke through the skyline, glinting off the rose-gold watch on her wrist. Erin stood silently for a few seconds, then said, "You have a meeting today with the European investors. They want to bring Grant Dining Group to Paris and London." Olivia nodded. "I know, but they're not just buying a brand. They have to buy the culture." The meeting began at 9. The lead investor, a Frenchman named Lucien Moreau, was charming, elegant, and warm-voiced. "Miss Grant, we want to bring Grant House to Europe. But over there, this kind of strong, dignity-based leadership might seem too American." Olivia rested her hand on the table, her tone steady. "Respect isn't American or French. It's a universal language." Lucien smiled. "I admire that confidence. But aren't you afraid of being labeled a powerful CEO?" Olivia smiled slightly. "If power means the ability to make people do the right thing, then yes, I'll take that label." The room laughed, not at the joke, but because they could feel the weight of her calm authority, a quiet command that needed no effort. When the meeting ended, as everyone left, Lucien turned to Erin and said softly, "I used to think a successful woman in this industry had to act like a man. She just proved me wrong." That afternoon, Olivia stopped by Grant House Midtown, the place where it all began. The kitchen gleamed brighter now, so spotless it felt almost sterile. The new sous chef, Marcus, was training a group of apprentices. When he saw her, the entire kitchen paused. "Good afternoon, Miss Grant," Marcus said. "Keep working," Olivia replied, stepping inside. The scent of melting butter and lemon filled the air. She watched every movement: a line cook adjusting a co-worker's mask, a prep cook steadying a colleague's arm after a spill. No shouting, no chaos. Olivia nodded. "Beautiful," she whispered. "A kitchen can run on calm." Marcus smiled. "I just follow what you left behind, the Grant Protocol." Olivia laughed softly. "That sounds too official. I only left a principle." "We turned it into culture," Marcus said. "This kitchen used to smell like smoke. Now it smells like respect." The words made Olivia's eyes sting unexpectedly. She turned away, pretending to study the quality checklist. "Keep that spirit," she said quietly. "Don't let old power return." Marcus nodded solemnly, as if receiving a sacred vow. That evening, Olivia attended the International Chef's Charity Gala. When she entered the room, fell silent for a few seconds, not out of awe for her fame, but because her presence alone drew voices down. She wore no extravagant gown, just a simple black dress, accented by the soft gleam of her rose-gold watch. When the host invited her to speak, she said only one line. "The true success of a kitchen isn't measured by Michelin stars. It's measured by how many people want to come back to work tomorrow." Applause filled the hall, not thunderous, but steady and sincere. A reporter asked Miss Grant, "What do you think made the world pay attention to your story?" Olivia smiled. "Because they saw themselves in it, the moments they were underestimated, the moments they stood up, and the moment they realized they didn't need to shout to be heard." After the gala in the parking lot, she met Jamal, the young kitchen assistant from that night, now a shift leader at another branch. The same honesty still shone in his eyes. "Miss Grant," he said, voice trembling, "that clip changed my life. I learned not to fear silence, because I realized sometimes silence is strength." Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "Don't just be silent. Use it to listen and to act. One day you'll lead others." When that day comes, remember people don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the one that makes them feel seen." Jamal nodded, tears glinting under the parking lights. "Thank you." "No," Olivia said softly. "Thank you for filming that video. Without it, the world would never have known that calm can be stronger than anger." She walked away, her figure fading into the night breeze. Jamal watched her go, as if witnessing the quiet departure of a legend the world had yet to fully recognize. That night, Olivia returned home. The city beyond her window was a sea of light. She stepped onto the balcony, removed her rose-gold watch, and set it on the railing, letting the moonlight dance across its glass. Closing her eyes, she breathed deeply, her breath mingling with the wind. Far below, the sound of car horns merged with Manhattan's endless rhythm, but inside her there was only stillness. Not the stillness of an ending, but the peace of someone who knows she has left behind something greater than fame. A legacy of composure, a power needing no papers, no signatures, yet destined to outlast any contract. Somewhere out there, thousands of kitchens still burned with open flames. And in each of those flames, a small part of Olivia Grant continued to burn, quietly, steadily shining with the same dignity she had taught the world to see. A week after the gala, the deeper effects of what the press now called the Grant House event began to unfold. It was no longer trending online, but its echo quietly rippled through the entire culinary industry. Rival restaurant groups were holding emergency meetings. Culinary schools were rewriting their training programs, and young chefs had started using the term dignity clause as part of their vocabulary. People said that in just a few days, Olivia Grant had done what professional associations had failed to do. In years, she had redefined kitchen culture. At the Hudson Yards headquarters, Olivia worked quietly as usual. Her screen was filled with emails from regional directors, process updates, internal reports, international collaboration proposals. But what made her stop wasn't digital. It was a printed letter sent by hand. The handwriting was masculine, slightly shaky but deliberate. It was from Dylan Rhodes. "Miss Grant," it began. "I've lost everything, my position, my reputation and trust. But what hurts the most is re-watching that video and realizing I didn't just insult you, I insulted myself. I thought I understood power. Thank you for proving me wrong. I'm not asking to come back. I just wanted you to know that today I began teaching again in a small cooking class in Queens. I told my first student that story. Not with anger, only gratitude." Olivia read to the end, her eyes softening. The letter wasn't long, but it carried something no public apology ever could true awakening. She placed it back into the envelope and carefully stored it in her desk drawer. At least, she whispered, the fire still burns even without smoke. That afternoon, Erin entered with a smile. "Good news," she said. "The Department of Labor is inviting you to speak at the National Conference on Workplace Justice. They want you to share how to lead without fear." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "They think I'm a motivational speaker now." "No," Erin replied. "They think you're living proof." Olivia smiled. "Then fine. But I won't give a speech. I'll tell a story." The conference took place in Washington, D.C. The grand hall was filled to capacity. On stage, Olivia carried no slides, no script. She simply stood there, holding a microphone, her voice calm, low, and sincere. "I didn't fire anyone out of anger. I did it because I refused to let anyone in that kitchen believe that disrespect is part of the process. I've stood where they stood, nervous, uncertain, and silent. But I've learned that silence isn't weakness. Silence is where power begins. The hall fell completely still. Many people took notes, others bowed their heads. In the front row, a young female chef placed her hand over her heart and nodded quietly. Olivia ended with a single line. A culture of respect doesn't need drums or slogans. It only needs people brave enough not to shout. As she stepped down, a middle-aged woman representing the National Culinary Association shook her hand, her voice trembling. "You have no idea, but today you made this entire industry look in the mirror." Olivia smiled. If one story can change how people treat each other, then it's worth telling. When she returned to New York, she stopped by the Brooklyn branch. There, the new head chef, Renee Alvarez, a Cuban-American woman, was leading her first training session for new staff. When Olivia entered, Renee was saying, "At Grant Group, everyone has the right to speak. But you must learn to use your voice to build, not to destroy." Olivia stood by the doorway smiling, watching for a long moment. When Renee noticed her, the class rose to their feet. "Don't stop," Olivia said. "I'm just here to listen." Renee's eyes glistened. "Thank you, Miss Grant. You made women like me believe that calm can be power." Olivia replied softly, "We don't have to compete for volume. We just have to hold our tone." Later that afternoon, she received a call from Lucien Moreau, her French partner. "Madame Grant," his deep voice came through the line. "Paris is ready. But I want you to attend the opening in person. People want to see the woman behind the story." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then agreed. "All right. But I'm not coming to be seen. I'm coming to see them." A week later, she arrived in Paris under a light rain. The streets were crowded, and inside the test kitchen of the first branch, everything was ready. On the front wall hung a brass plaque, engraved with the words, "Grant House, Paris, respect is our recipe." Olivia touched the cool surface. Beneath her fingertips it felt warm. Lucien approached, his tone thoughtful. "I used to think respect was something natural. Now I realize it's a recipe to be learned." Olivia looked around at the young French chefs preparing ingredients. They weren't looking at her as a CEO, but as a fellow professional. "The recipe's simple," she said. "1 part patience, 1 part integrity, and a generous dose of humility." The opening ceremony was brief. No flowers, no champagne, no press. As she left the kitchen, Olivia paused at the doorway, watching the passers-by. A young flower seller stopped, looked up at the plaque and smiled. "Madame, c'est vous, Olivia," bent down and nodded. "Oui." The girl offered her a small rose. "Thank you for teaching adults how to behave." Olivia accepted it, her heart quiet. It was one of those rare moments where she felt warmth deep within, not from success, but from realizing her message had traveled further than she'd ever intended, beyond language borders and industry. On her flight back to New York, Olivia sat by the window, watching clouds drift past. A message came from Erin. "The whole world is talking about the Grant principle. You've become a symbol of leadership ethics." Olivia read it, set her phone down, and leaned back. Sunlight filtered through, glinting on her rose-gold watch. She closed her eyes and whispered softly just to herself. "They don't need to remember my name. They just need to remember how I stood." Outside, the sky stretched endlessly. Below, thousands of kitchens still glowed with firelight. And somewhere, among the sound of knives, pans, and beating hearts, learning again how to treat one another with respect, the voice of Olivia Grant still lingered, a spark without smoke, bright enough to light an entire generation. That night, as the plane descended over New York, Olivia Grant was still awake. The city shimmered beyond the window, glowing like a map made of light. She wondered if one day, when her name was no longer mentioned, the values she believed in would still remain. In the car on her way home, her phone buzzed a message from Jamal. "Miss Grant today. I taught my first class. I told them your story. I said that power doesn't live in a voice, but in the way we stand firm when tested." Olivia smiled softly and leaned back in her seat. She didn't need to reply. That message alone was enough. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall glass windows. On her desk stood a small brass plaque engraved with new words. "Respect is not a rule. It's who we are." She stood there for a long moment, her eyes calm yet bright. Outside, the city hummed the blare of horns, voices calling out footsteps rushing through streets that never slept. But within that fleeting instant, Olivia felt peace. She understood that a true legacy isn't built from what we create, but from the people who keep its light alive for the next generation. And as the morning light caught her rose-gold watch, she whispered, "If they remember one thing, let it be this. Calm is not silence. Calm is the voice of someone who finally understands how strong they are." A month later, the media had stopped talking about the Grant effect, but the changes Olivia Grant had set in motion continued to spread quietly. In every branch, the words, "Respect is our recipe," were now displayed beside the menu board. During staff meetings, the phrase, "soft power protocol," was mentioned as a core principle. And in culinary classrooms, students passed around the story of the woman who taught the world to be silent long enough to listen. That afternoon, Olivia returned to Grant House Midtown, the place where it all began. There was no longer the smell of smoke or the sound of arguments, only the steady rhythm of knives on cutting boards and the soft laughter of young chefs. She stood in the doorway, looking at the brass plaque reflecting her image. This time, it was no longer a reflection of confrontation, but of harmony. Marcus walked over and said quietly, "Miss Grant, the kitchen's ready. Would you like to taste the new dish?" Olivia nodded and sat at the table by the window. When she took the first bite, the gentle flavor of orange and the faint aroma of herbs were perfectly balanced, precise, delicate, complete. She smiled. "Perfect," she said. Outside, the sunset cast gold across the street. Olivia rested her hand on the table, feeling the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. "No empire lasts forever," she whispered, "but dignity, if nurtured, will outlive every crown." And in the fading light of day, the woman sat in silence. No applause, no crowd, only the quiet breath of a legacy that continued to live on. From the perspective of a specialist in leadership and professional ethics, Olivia Grant's journey is not just the story of a woman in the culinary world, it is living proof of the power of principled composure. She didn't need to shout to claim authority. She transformed an entire system simply by standing firm in truth. That dignity became a beacon for a new generation of leaders, reminding them that respect is not a rule to be enforced, but the foundation upon which everything stands. If you believe that true power comes from calm and fairness, hit like to share this message and subscribe to join us as we uncover more stories where respect itself becomes strength. Leave a comment below with a phrase that reflects your belief. Hold your dignity.